Hey, once again, a warm welcome to everyone, and thanks for spending your weekend in the training sessions like this. Yeah, with that, we can just get started. So I'll just start sharing my screen. So let me know once everyone can able to see my screen. Uh, Funny, is my screen visible?
Yes, Naveen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just a bit about myself, myself, Naveen. So been part of in Salesforce ecosystem close to a decade. So I do work for a company called Sixt, which is like in a mobility space, car sharing, car rental company. And then I do write some blogs about marketing cloud called salesforcefan.com. Yeah, so with that, we can just get started in our today's topic. So, yeah, before just going, I'll just see in the chat if there is any questions in each session after. Then I will just try to answer it on that itself. Yeah, and then we can just go for the next topic in that chat session. Okay, so with that, in our today's topic, it's about APIs, right? So we just gonna talk a brief about API and the main APIs of SOAP and REST, and about Marketing Cloud APIs and some of the use cases what we can do with, right? And also we also do like it's not about Marketing Cloud API, but how to use the custom endpoint as an API inside Marketing Cloud to achieve certain things, right? So those are the things which we want to talk about. So with that, we can just get started. So yeah, so it's about what is about API, right? So API is like an application programming interface which helps you to transfer communication or interact the communication between multiple systems or one to each other. So when we say communication, it's about data. So you can just transfer the data between one system to another. So in general, nowadays we have lot of transfers, like you have like a SFTP, then now directly from AWS you can fetch the things and then pass it, and then the sync option, which is like a streaming thing. But behind the scene, for most of the things, it's about API. So that acts like a things which covers the data between two systems, or two or many systems, which can exchange the data. So let's say you are from Marketing Cloud and Salesforce would like to give the data to Marketing Cloud. They can also try to call Marketing Cloud APIs to push the data from Salesforce to Marketing Cloud. So in general, this API is to yeah, transfer the data. Simple. Yeah. Some of the main architectural in terms of API, right? So in types of API is about SOAP and REST. So we'll just see a brief differences between SOAP and REST. So for those who might be worked on SOAP and REST, so it's like SOAP is based upon XML architecture and like a message-based approach. Like you put the whole message into your XML itself, whereas an HTML is on HTTP approach, wherein you have a particular URL and which is like a HTTP URL, and then you call that URL and you can pass in whatever the resource, right? So it can able to fetch the data, or you can able to push the data. So that's about it. And then basically, SOAP only have XML for data exchange between one system to another system. But in case of REST, you can do XML, JSON, or plain text. You can use that. And yeah, SOAP messages are like you have a particular structure. For example, we will talk more about the structures in upcoming things, but you will obviously have a particular header and put body, which you have to pass in. But in REST, there is no specific kind of structure. For example, JSON, it just have to be a valid JSON. It can be in terms of a JSON in an array, or it can be in a single messages as well. So it doesn't matter. So there is no predefined structure in terms of REST. And SOAP has some inbuilt securities. Like for example, you can do an encryption into it, or you can also do a digital signature. So SOAP is more into a security things. But then in terms of REST, you have like again HTTPS and OAuth, which we will also cover with client ID, client secret, and things like that. In general, if you compare the speed, then I think REST is more faster than the SOAP. Again, it depends upon payload factor and everything. But in general, if you just say for minimum payload size, and then yeah, REST is more faster. That is due to its lightweight structure, because you don't need to pass header separate and body separate. But in case of SOAP, no matter what you call, you have to pass the header and body and in the particular format and then do it. So now if you ask me, okay, so which is the better approach, whether do I need to use SOAP or do I have to use REST? That depends upon the system, because not all the systems are supported REST, though now most of the systems are supporting. But let's say if there is a legacy system which only supports SOAP, you have to pass it via SOAP. That you cannot do it by REST. But given a chance, the system can accept both REST and SOAP. Then you can take a call of like depend upon your requirements and message structure and performance requirements, you can take a call. But yeah, so but what is better for marketing flow, that is again we will discuss in upcoming slides, like which API is better for which requirement and things like that we can discuss in our upcoming slides. So so this is just a brief overview of SOAP and REST, right? um just going into our marketing cloud main topics, right? So if you ask, what does marketing cloud then supports? Marketing cloud then supports both SOAP and REST, but it depends again upon like what you are trying to use, or what is your requirement is about, because not all the objects are supported in SOAP and not all the objects are supported in REST. For example, like if you want to retrieve the users from marketing cloud, then in that case you can only do via SOAP. There is no way that you can use REST API for it, because marketing cloud has been built in a way that it previously it was exact target and it was like a SOAP architecture, and then they started doing REST, but then Salesforce acquired. So now once after Salesforce acquired, like rest of the stuff, Salesforce is putting efforts into REST API instead of no more SOAP APIs. But the legacy system, which is in the exact target, it's still on the SOAP APIs, right? So, for example, this you want to retrieve the users from your accounts, or you want to create a folders and things like that. So those type of things, it's still supported by SOAP, but not in REST. Then what's supported in REST? The REST is about like a transactional API, journey builder API, and content builder API. So anything which is like a new things which Salesforce started doing, so those type of elements will be on REST. So um, so I can show you just a quick thing. So here would be the list of objects which is supported in SOAP. So for example, just um, going back, right? So there are SOAP and REST, and in the SOAP, in the left hand side, you can see the list of objects which are supported, and in the right hand side, there are the list of methods which is supported. For example, you can able to use SOAP API to create account, but you cannot able to use SOAP API to retrieve the accounts. Meaning like that means like in REST API as well, you cannot able to retrieve the accounts. That means like either there is no need to retrieve, or it's not possible at all. So that's what here the matrix is. So if you want to create an asset, or if you want to create an automation, you can use uh, uh, automation SOAP API. Under that, you can use a create method and then do it. Or if you want to perform the automation, let's say you want to run a SQL query activity directly in the SOAP API, you can also do that. So that's what this perform is about. And you can also schedule And retrieving is about you want to retrieve all the automations, then that's possible. Or you want to make an update in the automation, that is also possible. Like for example, let's say I want to make changes in SQL directly via SOAP API, that is also possible. And then if you want to delete certain things, then that's also possible. So these are the methods and these are the objects. So if you notice, like most of the tracking related ones and account related one, user related ones, and yeah. Those type of things are possible. It covers a wide variety. So this metric, so which you can, if you get a requirement in a way that if I can able to retrieve or create by API, so you can just check. First of all, it's present in REST API, which we'll cover now. And if it's not, you can check in SOAP API, and this matrix will help you to understand whether it's possible or not, right? So yeah, that's about the SOAP API, right? So now coming to the REST API, as I said, like certain things are possible in REST API and certain things are not possible in REST API. REST API is again used by OAuth token here. So we'll just see how those things works. But then yeah, so you can also again see here like the list of objects that's all possible in the REST API. So just if I go back. Yeah. So here you can see that, okay, so approvals are possible, or if I want to retrieve some asset, or if I want to create an asset into content builder and things like that, audit events, auth event, automation studio. So these are the things which are all possible in REST API. So first thing is like, if your requirement challenges, is this something possible, you can just check over in REST, and if it's not, then check over in SOAP. Then you can take a call on architecture and design oriented things, how you can make it work. Yeah. uh so that's about REST and SOAP. Just wanted to check if there is anything. Okay. um so having said that, now our session will be more going into you know uh programming oriented. So we'll just see, we'll cover lesson slide, but more in mm, showing the interface and doing the things, right? So we'll start with REST, right? In this case, so in this case, okay, to start any of the REST API activity, you need to create a installation package. So you may ask now, okay, what is installation package? So installation package is where you get the authentication credentials that you can share it to the other system, and they can so this creates an interface, and you can able to use this client ID, client secret to mm, call this call the marketing cloud with this client ID and client secret, right? So basically, yeah, it's just a additional layer which creates on top of marketing cloud, wherein some other system can able to access marketing cloud, or they can push the data to marketing cloud. So one thing is that just that we have to be very careful in sharing the threads and things like that, so we can keep yeah. So in this case, let's say I will create a package called test community. Yeah. So once you do this, first thing is like, it will tell you which is your source account on which you are creating this. So in this case, source account is test environment, but you can also provide access once you create it, right? So right now it's only have US, but once you create the components inside the thing, you can also provide access to other business units as well if you need to. So now, yeah, so going back to things, so we just created a package. So we have to add our components here. So there are like lots of other types of components is there. But today we'll just focus about our API integration, right? But just in case, if you want to just look into some other components as well, so just a quick thing is like, you can use it for marketing cloud app. So you can host some app, and you can have the URL. And once you have the URL, you can just have an add it over here. Then it will create as an app over here. So that's about marketing cloud app if you select this. Then you can do this as a journey builder activity. So we call it as a custom activity, right? So for example, the marketing cloud SMS is pretty costly, so you think that you want to switch it to Twilio or some other SMS. So you can also create our SMS gateway in some other application. You can just create an application in Heroku or AWS, and you can have the URL, and you can able to connect that with the journey builder. So that's about custom activity. So for that, if you want to use, you need to select this. Then you also can use the journey builder as an entry source. You start the data by pushing. So how we have the journey builder API event. So similarly, you can also have an entry source type of things into it, and you can able to push it. Then you have this custom content block wherein you have an email. Let's say I want to show something like weather related reports in your email, wherein that block needs to call an external API to fetch the data back into Marketing Cloud. So that particular custom content block can able to use it. So those, and then if you want to use the solution package for package manager, wherein package manager is like a deployment tool, so you want to drag it in or pull it out. So for that you can able to use. So uh, so this install packages, you can not only use that. So let's say if you create one, you can only use only for that. No, it's not like that. So you can use for combination of both as well, or you can use the same as well. So but yeah, you once you use it, you cannot use it for others in the same package. So for example, let's say you create an API integration, you can also create one for Marketing Cloud app in the same install package. You don't need to keep creating one. But if you create one API integration, next time for the same install package, you cannot create one more API integration. So that's how it would be. uh yeah, having said that, so we'll focus on now API integration, right? So we click on next. So, okay, so now you have three different types, right? So one is like web app, which we just discussed. So if you want to host the solution as in an app, let's say it can be a cloud page as well. So you create a cloud page and you want to show that cloud page in your app. Then and also you need an creds client area and client secret to open that. Then you can use this web app. Or let's say you want to create a public app, like for example, Google Authenticator, like you have a Google sign up. So when you do a sign up, you also have the Google symbol, and you can connect directly with Gmail and pass in the credit. Similarly, you can also create a public app that will create a sync between Marketing Cloud, wherein you just need a client ID for it, no more client secret, which is like a basic authorization token. Or you want to create a server to server call. Let's say Salesforce is there and Marketing Cloud is there, and Salesforce would directly call a Marketing Cloud API to push the data. So in that case, it's a server to server interaction. So you want to use that, then you can use this. So let's say now we are going to do a server to server, right? So once you do a server to server, and you're going to transfer the credentials to other team, so it's better to limit your scope as much as possible. So in this case, we will just limit it to whatever be the case, right? So for example, I would like to limit the scope only to data extension, because they are going to read and write, right? Or I can do the subscribers. So if they wanted to add some subscribers and things like that, so you can able to limit the scope from them. If you provide everything, then they have access to all the components inside Marketing Cloud, which they can they can able to delete as well. So this will help you to limit the scope. So once you click on save, then so a component will be added here, and then you will get the client ID, client secret, and yeah, the base auth URI. So just a bit about these things, right? So the scope which we just selected will be present over here. Then you get a client ID and client secret, which you have to give it to the external systems. And you have this uh, base auth URI, which is like first thing is like you have to make an authentication token. So the way it goes is just like this. So let's say that um, imagine a case that Salesforce is calling Marketing Cloud, and you to like to trigger email. Okay, so in this case, what's happening is like Salesforce will try to make an authentication call, which is the first call, right? Um, then in this authentication call, you will get a client ID, client secret, and if you want to restrict with that, so you can also do it an MID. So then the client credentials. So these are the things which they will do it in a payload, and then they will get a response uh, with the status as 200, and in the response you will get an access token, right? So this access token is valid for, let's say, around 20 minutes for now. So you'll get it. So once you get an access token, then you will make the API call to, right, which is triggering the email part. Uh, in this case, they will use this access token as a token to go for the next call. So in here you'll do an authorization as an header, and then you do a bearer access token here, and then you call the Marketing Cloud API, whichever API for the subsequent call you would like to call, then it triggers an email. So this is the structure for all the REST APIs in the Marketing Cloud. Your first call is going to be an authentication call. Of course, you can able to optimize this numbers, the number of tokens generating every time and things like that. But always you need to have a token for the call which you're going to perform, like accept this authentication token. So once you get an authentication token, you get a REST URI token. I mean endpoint. So this is the endpoint which you will use for the subsequent call, along with the other ones. For example, if you want to trigger a journey builder, then you will use an interaction underscore whatever. That will look into it. But then this is what you will you will call. So we'll just quickly look into that part, right? So so in this case, how to do it in the Postman, just real quick. So you will use this auth URI, and then you will have this client ID basically, and you will have this client secret, and you will have this MID basically. So once you have this in place, then you get this access token, and this will expire in 1079 seconds, and then you will also get the scope, and you will also get the SOAP instance URL and REST instance URL. So in order to use the next subsequent call, you can use the REST instance URL. You can grab the URL from here, and then whatever the next call you can make, you can try to make it over here. So this is what it is about uh, on the first thing. So just give me, can we change this scope once the integration setup? Yes, yes, of course. So you can able to change the scope. So let's say that, okay, the you initially their scope is only to add a record in a data extension, but now their scope is to trigger out an email or access journey builder. You can always extend the scope. So that is totally fine with it. Yeah. So now uh, we will just, I'll just show you. So let's take the first one, which is like address validate email, right? So in this case, what does it mean, Marketing Cloud? So let's say I have a use case. Let me show you a real use case itself. So I work for six. So in this case, I go to this six website, and then here it says like register now for six newsletter to get 10% offer. So I'll just click on register now, and it will take me to a cloud page basically. So so in this case, it is asking me, so since I'm going to sign up a newsletter, and I will get a 10% offer, and then I can use that for my car rental in a subsequent 10% offer, right? So in this case, there could be a case where one bot can able to access this page, so you use the reCAPTCHA and things like that. So second thing could be that you use some people can just simply spoil by entering the invalid email addresses, right? So for this, we use this type of API to validate the email once after you signed up. And let's say if you enter your invalid email address, then we try to capture that invalid email address and we show a different message. So I will just first show you the behind architecture, how it goes, right? So yeah. So we do this validate email address. So what we try to do over here is like, so you have this client ID, client secret, we pass in the details, right? So this I'm using it in AmScript and I'm getting the token. Once I get the token, right? So what I here I'm doing is like uh the after the REST URL. So in the post, the REST URL, after the REST URL, you will have this additional endpoint, right? So this is my additional endpoint. So let's say your REST URL is this, then this is my additional URL. And in this URL, what it says over here is that you need to pass. So to in order to find out the email address is valid or not, you have to enter the payload needs your email address, and there are certain validators. So what are these validators? Again, this will not check whether it's a real email address or not, but it will help you to check at least the basic validation. So for example, if the syntax validator will evaluate if the email address syntax is fine, right? And MX validator will evaluate if that particular domain has an MX record type or not. And list detective is, again, we know that if your email address is like info at and admin at is there or not. So those type of things we try to avoid in B2C customer perspective. But of course, you have the option to remove certain validations as well. So here is the sample payload looks like, right? So you in the body you have to, so let's say I create a new post call. So in the new post call, so what I will do, I'll take this REST URL. So this is your final URL, and what I will take is the basically the rest. Yeah. So basically the rest URL, and additionally I will add this post URL. So once I have it here, then in the header I will pass um, content type. I'm going to pass as a application JSON, right? So because it is going to be a JSON in my payload, and I'll do an authorization and bearer. Then you'll have a access token, which we get it from here. So here this will be our post call. So in the body, so you will have this over here. So in this case, what I'll do is like 1 2 something, and I'm going to check if this email address is valid or not. So I'll copy this access token, then turn send. So here it says like insufficient privileges to complete this action. So you get this type of message when the scope for you is like very limited, because you don't provide the necessary scope for it to access and things like that. But once you provide the necessary scope, then you will get the access. So that's what we try to define it over here. So let's say in this case, I'm entering like admin at salesforce.com. So it says the final output says it's valid, right? So admin at salesforce.com, sorry, valid is false. So why it's valid is false? So it's list detective, meaning like it has admin at salesforce.com, info at salesforce.com. Those were like list detective, which we don't need actually in the sign up, because I don't need any B2B related customers, only B2C related customers. So similarly, I'm just giving Naveen at for salesforce.com. So here also it says the response as like uh, validation is failed. That is due to MX validator, because for this 4@salesforce.com. There is no domain, MX validation domain for 4@salesforce.com. And then you have an proper email address, naveen@salesforce.com, it will say it's valid. It will not check whether the email is exactly valid, but it will try to at least check the basic validations over in your sign up. So this is one of the example. So I will try to show it over here. So let's say I enter the first name, last name, and then I will just say com, right? So I'll just, this is, I know that this is my invalid email address. So what I'm trying to do it over here is like based upon if it's valid, true or false, I'm going to change. Let's say I click on subscribe over here. So once I click on subscribe with some invalid email address, so it says like, okay, your email address has been misspelled. Please try again. Uh, but I can try some valid email address, then it will accept, and then the double opt-in email goes and you verify with the double opt-in, then you get a newsletter of 10% discount. So that's the case, but in general, the use case is just like this. So basically just to validate the email address. So let me check what you mean. Okay, how to match the endpoint token? Endpoint token. I think you mean here is an access token. If you mean yes, so if the access token which you are passing from here to over here, right? So the access token which you are passing, and then you are making a call, it will throw uh, uh, like access token is still invalid, or the endpoint doesn't exist in this particular business unit, things like that. It will throw an error. From there you can able to uh, able to go for it. So right now this is having the insufficient privileges, so similar type of 403 error or 404 error or 400 error, so it might throw in. From there you can able to figure out whether mm, whether you can able to match it or not, right? So what do you mean by payload? It's a transaction. Okay, so yeah, so when I say payload, I just mean this part, like what you send it in a request body, that we call it as a payload. Um, uh, yeah, payload means there, data in which, yeah, correct. So yeah, so that's a request body which we try to call it in the API call. So similar to that, you can able to validate. So there are like lot of other use cases as well in REST API. For example, you can able to create an assert, update an assert, retrieve an assert, things like that. So yeah, so you have things work on that. Um, yeah, now moving to SOAP API, right? So in terms of SOAP API, we are going to use a tool called SOAP UI, which is very famous for similar how Postman is famous for REST API, and SOAP UI is famous for SOAP calls. So I'm going to use this SOAP. So first thing is like in case of SOAP, you have to use as we discussed earlier. So we have to use the protocol. So the protocol here is like you have to first get the WSDL. So you can go to admin and account settings. So you can see the WSDL over here. So once you have this WSDL, I create a SOAP project, right? And I just copy paste this WSDL, and then I click on OK. So what it happens is behind the scene, it happens is like whatever the methods which Marketing Cloud supports, that will automatically get created. So for example, configure, Marketing Cloud supports configure, create, delete, and everything. So in those scenarios, it just creates. So if I click on this request one, so it will automatically create under the method whatever I need, the client key, user ID, everything, it just creates. It's just that you need to fill in the values, right? So just that, yeah, that's it. So you just need to fill in the proper values. So now for this particular demo, I will show you how to create a data extension folder in Marketing Cloud, right? So the scenario, so for this, I have to switch to the SOAP endpoint, right? So in the SOAP endpoint, we'll go to object. So I'm going to create a data extension folder. So you have to come to here and I'll go for data folder. So under data folder, whatever the name which you see here, right? So those things have already created or partially at least created over here. So you can use these fields for your payload basically. So this is how in general basically these are the properties which you can use for creating the data folder, right? So I have already created one XML payload. So let me just walk you through how it looks like. So first thing is like you have the envelope with the WSDL, so it creates an envelope. This is the thing which the structure which we are talking about. So every soap will have this envelope, and you also have the header, and you have the body. That's it, right? So under the header, you have two ways. So the previous, the old architecture is about like passing the username and password in the header. uh, when we say passing the username and password, you need to pass the real marketing cloud username and password. So when you give this username and password, you are trying to expose the whole system altogether, right? So that is the older way of passing, but the newer way is using the client ID and client secret. So use the client ID and client secret. You don't need to necessarily give the username and password to Marketing Cloud. Instead, you just give the client ID and client secret, and you have the additional layer to scope it out, right? So in this case, we give the client ID and client secret. So basically, you use the client ID and client secret to get the access token. And once you get this access token, you use this new access token over here. So for example, we will again once again request the client ID and client secret, and I will paste it over here. So we call this as a fuel auth token. So in this auth token, you will paste this auth token over here. So that is your header basically. So with this header, I'm going to create a create request. So in this case, I'm why create request, because I'm going to create a folder basically. So here that's about the create request. So in this folder, you have the parameter of client. So whatever the mm, whatever you see it over here, right? So client here refers to the client ID. So you have to put your MID over here. So the MID here refers to this one. So this is will be your MID, and whether you want to add a modified date, object date. So where exactly I'm going to create a folder. So I have to give the ID of the folder, parent ID. So in my case, I will create the folder below the data extensions. So how do I know the parent folder? So my parent folder is about 5798. So if you inspect the element on this, so you get a category ID. So this category ID is 5798. So that is nothing but your parent ID. Then this covers the parent folder. Then what you give the name of the folder. So in this case, I'm going to name it as this soap, and description of the folder and content type. So the content type here refers to data extension. You can do email, because in content builder as well you have folders. So you can in this case it's a data extension folder. So I'm going to create a data extension. And then you have is active, which is true, is editable is true. So these are the properties which is already listed out here. So you can check is active, is editable, modified name and everything. So with that, what I am going to do is like I'll just copy this whole request, and I'm going to put it in the postman sorry soap UI. So once I put it in the soap UI, I'll just run this particular piece, right? So then it returns me the XML response with of like I'll just copy this response and I will show that here. um yeah, so it says like okay, the folder created successfully, and it's less like 200. Okay, so sometimes you get 500, which is internal server error, 400 bad requests, things like that. Those are the calls which you need to make. But then here you just say that okay, the folder has been created successfully. So let's just go back to our data extension. Currently, there is no folder called test soap. So let me just refresh this page. Yeah, so then it just creates a folder called test soap UI. So this is how you can use the SOAP API to create certain things. This is of course not possible using REST API. So yeah, that's a bit. So when we use API in SSJS, XX proxy and also call API URL function of SJS like HTTP post sometimes, which is fast in the cloud page. Yeah, so um in term okay, so now we are switching into okay, so we are switching into SSJS and under SSJS you are asking about the difference between post and XX proxy. So for any long term, so for example, if I want to retrieve all the rows in the data extension, which is like a too much of consumable option, so in that case you will use XX proxy for more. Because you know it's a highly performance things comes in. So in that scenario, you will use XX proxy, where you will use just lookup rows, which can able to only lookup rows to 2500 rows or functions, or use retrieve object uh, to retrieve the rows of data extension that can also use up to 2500. So where XX proxy comes in a place where you need to retrieve more and more in a loop, then those type of heavily automated issues you can use XX proxy, which is much faster than the normal core library of SSJS. So I would say you can for those, but if you are just calling to external system, just some external you just want to call, it's a single transaction call, then you can use HTTP post, or you can use the other SSJS function, so which will not be in so much performance issue. Yeah. Okay, so the difference between Postman and SOAP UI, yeah, SOAP UI is meant for SOAP API call. In Postman also you can make a SOAP call, but it comes with a lot of differences. So usually I prefer SOAP UI for SOAP, and Postman is for REST. So, but that doesn't mean that Postman you cannot use SOAP. You can use SOAP, but it's the structure is like a bit different. In SOAP UI, you can able to understand a bit more easier, and you can able to have these type of methods which is already get created. Yeah, so that's about the things. Is there any way that you can get access token via SOAP API instead of REST? No, unfortunately, yeah, you as I mentioned, right? So yeah, there are two ways. Either you the SOAP API is all about like username and password, right? So SOAP API is about, so instead of this fuel auth, you can also do like username, and then you can have a password, right? So wherein you can type in your username and password, which is the actual SOAP works. Um, so in this case, you have to give the Marketing Cloud username and password, but yeah, you cannot use the authentication endpoint to get an access token. You have to use the REST API to get an access token, and then use that access token in SOAP UI. That's how it goes. Yeah. Um, Okay, so now stepping back to our use cases, which is done. So, okay, so now we will look into the custom endpoint, right? So now you might be wondering, okay, what is this custom endpoint is about, right? So we know market. So the difference is like, so we know SFMC endpoints, right? So when we say endpoint is about, um, for example, let so we were just looking out for this, right? So wherein you have address v1 validate, this is like a static endpoint. So wherein your payload just changes, your email address changes, but then this is just a static endpoint which is provided by Marketing Cloud. But there are things which you can use. so in this SFMC endpoint is basically a static endpoint, but there are things which you can use like a cloud page as an endpoint, like in this case, code resource as an endpoint, right? So you can use that, and you can achieve certain things basically using that. So here is my use case. So my use case is like let's say some X system is there, and this X system will make a call, API call to by passing email address, right? Uh, by passing email address, if this email address exists in Marketing Cloud, and if so, so let's say if so, then I would like to show the response with all the fields, values, and everything. So in this case, I will show all the data extension fields as in my response. Okay. But let's say if the email address is not there, then the response is like not exist, right? So if not there, then I have to say like not exist. So that external system, the X system, whoever is calling, right, they can get to know whether they can process certain functions as well. So this is just a sample use case. So I will just show you how to do that, right? So in this case, I have to log in. Just give me 1 minute. Mm. Okay, I'll share my screen again. Yeah, so and switch it. So I have a cloud page, and the use case is something like this, right? So I have this particular URL, which is nothing but a code resource. So if you see, it's a JSON code resource, wherein if any external system call the endpoint, then they don't access, they don't, they don't need to, our a super message will not get consumed. So I have a thing wherein I have a data extension, right? Um, in this case, this is my master data extension. I have the list of fields basically here. In this, I have like 78K records. So my use case is like this. So the external system will check some email address, abc at abc.com, right? Um, uh, if this exists in this data extension. And if yes, then I have to retrieve all the fields. uh, if no, then we have to just show some other response basically. So I'll just show you how a demo quick, right? So this is our thing. So so here I have this URL, and I'm passing the email address as this, okay, in the Postman, and I'm using the content type application JSON, and I'm passing this API key. So this is just a validation. If you pass this particular API key only, then we will show the record. If not, then don't show the record, right? So then I click on just send. So what happens is like in my response, I show this under user, I retrieve all the first name, last name, all the fields from data extension. So this type of thing is not provided by Marketing Cloud. There is no static API which can able to tell you, okay, if you call this endpoint, it can able to retrieve. So only SOAP API call is used to able to retrieve the records, but you have to retrieve all the records, like 2,500 records, one by one, batch by batch. So it's very hard for the external system to consume if you have so much of records, right? And you have a lot of timeout issues. So in those case scenarios, you can build something of your own. You use the cloud page as your resources, and then you try to use it, and you try to retrieve, show that endpoint with some proper things. But let's say I add some other email address. Let's say I add some other email address. then it just says that okay, the user is blank, right? So and this is my response ID. So so in this case, they can able to understand, okay, there is no user with this email address basically. So uh, so how do you achieve that? So this is my code which we have written in the cloud page. So basically here what we try to say is like we can you can so in my requirement they can either pass client ID or email address. So I'm just requesting both, and I'm checking if it's client ID, then I'm using this platform.request.guest post data. So and which is nothing but the guest in the post data, you'll have this API key. So I have to first check if the API key is correct. So in there I'm checking if the API key is this one. Only if this is present, then I will process the below things, right? But if it's not present, then I will not process the below things. Then my user can be in an array format. For one email address, that can be multiple records could also be there. So I'm just forming the payload in the right itself, right? And then I'm retrieving I'm just using the rows dot lookup, and I'm using inside the for loop, and I am writing all the first name, last name, email address, and then I'm forming the payload the below as a below response, and I'm sending it back. So so what happens is like if the same email address exists in two rows, then yeah, under the users array, you will get they will get two arrays, so they get to know, okay, for that particular email address we have duplicates, so they can also perform certain things as well. So yeah, basically this is one of the use case wherein you can try to use cloud page endpoint, which is like a custom endpoint, and write your SSJS towards it and form a response and then give back. Or you can, based upon response, you can make some other call to certain systems and then do certain things as well. So yeah, lot of use cases to explore with this custom endpoint as well. So with that, that goes our thank you. So any question so far? Um, and any questions you have in mind with respect to API, you can just feel free to share. Okay, we can use Postman for instance of API. Um, yes, you can actually use both SOAP API and REST API. Uh, yeah, but it's just a structure between the SOAP API for the Postman. It's a bit different. So I prefer SOAP UI for SOAP, but then yeah, you can do that. Can you send code? In general, there is not much of a code. It's all up how you are trying to leverage. So you can just uh use SSJS functions like a platform dot get post data. So to get the request from the post and things like this, or you can also get the header and things like that. So that's very basic, but I can send it. Sure. Unlisted API. Yeah, so there are like unlisted APIs as well, which I don't recommend to use because going off the releases, I don't have a document as such, but in our community, like Greg or other people, you know, other people uses the undocumented APIs as well, but it's like not recommended to use because going on releases you don't use those, right? So like not everyone use, or Salesforce themselves can able to change the architecture. So yeah, I don't recommend them to use, but then use it with your own caution. Um, then can you differentiate open? Yeah. So in general, if you want to talk about only with respect to marketing cloud, I would suggest you just check the list of objects. Um, uh, you just need to do a list of objects which is supported, and then you can figure out whether you want to go with the SOAP and REST API. That would be a good starting point. But in general, if you have both SOAP and REST APIs are supported, then up to the producer or the source system to call to make the decision if they are comfortable with the XML structure, or if they are comfortable with the JSON structure. Mm, yeah, so you want the blog? Yeah, you can use this. Um, yeah, okay, cool. Is the API key randomly generated? How we decide the custom endpoint? Yeah, that's a good question. So, in this case, the API key is pretty static, like how we have Bitly. If you see Bitly thing, the API key will be pretty static. Of course, you can change the API key. In this case, I'm not using the randomly generated. It's a static one, but you can also ask the team to use some other you can also use some other endpoint and to generate an API key, and you can pass that API key here, and we can validate if that API key comes from there and things like that. So the authentication, you have a lot to explore when it comes to custom endpoint. You can do a different authentication endpoint in that case, but in this case, it's just a static one. But of course, we can make it randomly generated as well, like how we generate for custom thing. Or you can also do like um client ID and client secret alone in the marketing cloud and get the access token, and use that access token we can able to match with the custom endpoint as well. So yeah, lot to explore there. So PayPay is the request data and REST API. No, so PayPay and both is for. So the question is like more SOAP is to request data and REST is to retrieve. No, actually. So SOAP API and REST API can do both. Like they can also push the data and they can also use the request the data. It's just that the way they communicate with different system is a bit different. SOAP API use XML and REST API use JSON, XML, and text as well. So it's just the way is different, but in general uh, the getting the data or pushing the data all are the same. Yeah. Okay, so with that, we can end our session. So thank you so much for attending or spending the weekend in this session. Yeah, thank you so much. Yep. Anything closing note? Okay, so Mastan, should we close the session? Okay, I think they are away. If yes, then yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.